It's time we talk about housing. Join us for an important conversation with the mayors of Maui County, Oahu, Hawaiʻi Island, and Kaua'i as they discuss Hawaii's housing challenges. Hear their solutions for affordable housing, plans to keep generational residents from leaving the islands, and their commitment to the people of Hawaii. It's not just talk. It's a blueprint for a future where everyone has a place to call home.
Check 1 2. Check 1 2. Yes.
Testing. Yes.
Maybe they don't want me on this thing.
No.
Test. Okay.
All right.
Set. I guess we should just stand up, bow, and leave since Matt covered everything already, right? And just go right to lunch. Go right to lunch. Well, I want to just start off by thanking the four mayors for being here today, making the trek from their counties to support Maui and to support the Council for Native Hawaiian Advancement. I wanted to open up with a couple comments, and I shared with them what I wanted to say earlier, and we're in the back room. When Kuhio asked about bringing these four leaders together, it came from a place that he felt, and I agreed, that there's a special relationship, a special pilina, a special force that is unlike any time, I think, in the history of our place, where you have four leaders that have aloha for one another, that are non-traditional politicians. They didn't come through the political school. They didn't come with the political, sometimes baggage that many politicians tend to have to deal with. So I think that the feeling that we have is that there is a unique force that can be galvanized, unlike any time, to help us knock through some of the biggest challenges Hawaii is facing at a very home rule kind of place. Not in Honolulu, sitting at the top of our capital, not in Washington, D.C., while we will need, you will need, and we will need those leaders' support, and they are there to support us. But this is the first time that you have a group of leaders that are synchronized and have aloha for each other that complement their strengths and weaknesses. So I want to give you my version of them, and I've gotten to know them well, and I know this is dangerous because they all have mics as well, but I'm going to start with...
We all have stuff on YouTube, baby.
I'm going to start with Mayor Roth. Not born here, not raised here, but definitely a man that has developed a Hawaiian heart. It's obviously, Mayor Roth, you love Hawaii. It comes out in you in every way, shape, or form. You were a former prosecutor. You've seen some of the challenges that our people have faced throughout Hawaii. And as I've gotten to know you, I would consider you a steady hand. I've never seen you raise your voice. I've never seen you blink. And I really appreciate that steadiness in you. Mayor Kawakami, you're the local boy at the bone, bro. True and true. You grew up surfing. I know the ocean is part of your life every day. You grew up in a small business, in a very difficult business, growing up in the grocery business. Margins are low, a lot of volume. You got to turn over, a lot of pressure from the family. And while I didn't know you as a kid, I can tell you were a scrapper. And as he came into public life, I'm sure he had to dial that down a little. But what still remains, and for all you local brothers out there, he still get the crooked eye. Still got the crooked eye. So move to Mayor Blangiardi. I don't even know where to start with you, Mayor. Football coach, media icon, very successful businessman. But the one that I think of you is middle linebacker. And if Mayor Roth is the yin, you are the yang of that relationship. And if I'm in a dark alley, I want to be with you by my side.
Thank you.
I want you to. And then Mayor Bissen, of course. Kanaka true and true. Maui in your soul. Former prosecutor, former judge, now turned politician. I know you don't like me saying that. You serenaded our souls in your opening remarks. hard not to aloha you, hard not to love you. I shared with him backstage, because I couldn't be here on Wednesday when they opened up. I had some of our team members here. One of them was Sheila Sarhangi, who is our communications person, and she says, text me, I want to know how he did. Says, wow, we'll share with you some of his points. He ended with this and got a standing ovation. This man, I have so much respect for him. That was Sheila. And then Michelle, right after, without requesting it, this was Michelle's comments to me. She says, Mayor Bissen's speech to open up conventions was phenomenal. I love this man. You know, how about that, right? So I think we know that housing has been one of the biggest challenges that we faced as a place. It's the number one reason why people are exiting our pa'aina. Across all races, across all ethnicities. We've heard time and time again what the problems are, the bottlenecks in permitting, opposition to development, NIMBYism, not in my backyard. And we have the tools, we know the solutions, but for some reason, we cannot break through these challenges. And none of us want to have a wonky conversation about housing. But I'm going to start with Mayor Kawakami and just start. Why, Mayor, in your career, and even in your lifetime, why are we in this situation we are today, and why have we not been able to break through? And what are we going to have to do to get the ball rolling on housing?
Well, must be Energizer batteries in that one's. You know, first and foremost, to the people of Maui, and in particular, our people of Lahaina and West Maui, I want to relay a message from the people of Kaua'i and Niihau that all of you folks are in our hearts and our prayers every single day and night. And we want to reassure you that just like what Micah said, with all four mayors being together, we are all standing right beside your mayor, Mayor Bissen, to make sure that we can emerge as one. And the people of Maui are so beautiful, and thank you for having us here. And if there's anybody here from Kaua'i and Niihau, I want to say thank you so much for representing our islands up here on Maui, and you folks make me so proud. I feel so lucky to belong to that group of people. You know, Micah, the question of, well, why is it so difficult? You know, when we came in, when our administration, when our team came into office, we wanted to set the baseline and set a foundation and set an example of what our people could see what government could be, and to sort of raise that level of expectation. And I really think with all the tools that we have, whether it's federal money, LIHTC tax credits, all of the boring stuff, our toolbox has a lot of tools. But to me, the biggest component is you're going to need to have elected officials and leaders that are willing to lose friends along the way. Quite honestly, to make it very simple. Change is often the most challenging thing for people to embrace, but that's the only constant thing in life is change. And although a majority of our people understand that we need housing, it's hard for them to embrace that change if the change is happening in their backyard. And I can tell you, to be comfortable with the feeling of potentially losing people along the way because you're upsetting them for the greater good is something that we have to be at peace with. And until you get leaders that are at peace with, for the greater good, losing people along the way, we will continue to be in a whirlpool of just stagnation and trying to do the same things over and over again.
You know, I think that speaks to the non-traditional perspective, right? I mean, I think as those who come up through the political process tend to build political relationships with that tend to may not always allow you to think freely, to act freely as you typically would. I would think, Mayor Blangiardi, you probably felt a lot of that with your rail discussion. I mean, when you came in, rail was a buzzsaw for you. The financial model didn't work. You had stakeholders that previous mayors had made commitments to, and you had to right the ship. Now it seems like it's on a pathway to a good place right now. How are you speaking to Mayor Kawakami's comments? Did you experience some of that?
Well, thank you, Micah. Well, let me just open up in the spirit of how Derek began his comments. And I read this morning that today marks the 100th day since the fire. And I would tell you, all of us have had more than a heavy heart for everybody on Maui and the impact it's had. And really, quite honestly, I think it's been felt through our state. So this was an unimaginable event. It was the third in 3 unimaginable events, I think, in just 3 years. COVID being the first. For us on Oahu, Red Hill became an incredible challenge. And now, of course, these fires. So we are here, and I want to echo what you said. I have great respect for these men. The leadership challenges that we find ourselves in, while different perhaps on each island, we share and trust with each other to be thought partners, to be resources, to be whatever we can be. So I'm honored to be here today. Look, rail, and I know you want to talk about housing, but rail was a challenge, but I'll tell you why. I made a decision to run for mayor in February of 2020. Well, no, this is the day I announced. 3 weeks later, COVID hit. And what that meant was we were all locked down, and the campaign, and I had never run for office before, became a series of never-ending Zoom calls. I was doing 5 or 6 a day, 6 and 7 days a week. And it was, in some ways, looking back, an incredible learning experience, because it's one thing to talk to an auditorium full of people, but this was group after group. Sometimes it was 6 people, sometimes it was 50 people, sometimes they were sober, sometimes they weren't, you know? But you got to listen to what was on their mind.
He is the yang, remember that.
No, I could tell you that rail was a subject of more than discontent, and I was the 4th mayor to touch the project. So the month before, in the middle of a pandemic, in December, the prior administration fired the CEO, removed the CEO, pulled the P3 out, which was the source of funding, announced a $3.67 billion overrun and an additional 2-year delay from 2031 to 2033. And I had the privilege and the benefit of talking to the FTA, who had not given the city a nickel since 2017, and being told, you better get your act together and get it together very quickly, because we have a lot of people who want the $750 million that we have not given you yet, that it cost the city a lot of money in financing costs alone. Figure that out, and figure that out right away. So to that point, I think this job for me, and I think I speak for all of us, being mayor is it's about problem solving. And it's about, first and foremost, trying to understand the problem, really understand the problem. Then, if you can, develop a solution. And of course, then it's about execution. So for us, it was really about getting the right stakeholders in the room, understanding where we were, understanding the challenge at hand, and we went about the task of solving that problem.
Were you making trade-offs along the way? I mean, how did you approach it?
Well, I think the trade-off, look, there were people telling me you should stop it, you should turn it into a bike path, you should, tear it down. We heard everything you could possibly imagine about it. I think when you get into, and I'll say this, and I've said it openly, it's such a privilege to be mayor. It's also the challenge of a lifetime, and it's the responsibility of a lifetime. And if I've learned anything in the private sector, one of the real keys, if you're going to be effective, is you have to be, or have the courage to make decisions. So you don't think. If you feel like you're making the very best decision, you're not going to think. You don't have the time to try to placate the people who are going to disagree with that decision. You make it with the best conviction you can, with the best reasoning you can. I really love what the young man, Matt was his name up here, talking about data. And you pull all of that stuff together, and you just go for it. And, you know, there's an old saying that I've always liked. There's a reason why you don't see statues of committees in parks. Okay? Yeah. You've got to own it when you're in the leadership role. You got to understand that moment. And you've got to realize that that's the expectation for the public, too. And I think that part of what I listened to about the rail, I know we're here to talk about housing, was it was all over the place. I mean, it was all over the place. And it seemed really, quite honestly, even the minority was even in favor of it because they had given up hope. They had lost. So since we've done the rail, we got it operating on June 30th, got the FTA back at the table, providing money. We're on target, on time with a plan. We did some things that everybody said you couldn't do. We got the FTA to agree to a slightly shortened route to 18.75 miles versus the 20. We got them to approve it without an EIS, which everybody said would take years. What we really did, if you want to know the truth, is we simply sat around and said, okay, how much money has been spent? How much money is in the pipeline? What has been built, and what can we build with the remaining amount of money, and what does that look like? And can we guarantee that we'll do that? I mean, in its simplicity, that's what it came down to. And we got them to buy that because they sent teams in here to vet it, make sure our numbers were correct. We had to go through a lot in that regard. It wasn't just take our word for it. I'm not trying to oversimplify it, but it's about problem solving and then doing what's in the best interest of the public. That's the responsibility.
So when you think about what the journey for the west side of this island is going to be, and to both of your points, and I'd love to stay on this side of the aisle right now. I mean, what guidance do you give this community? What guidance do you give this leadership about some of the stomach-turning experiences and what their expectations? I mean, it's gonna be a tough road, and I would assume some friends are gonna be challenged. It's gonna get complex. How would you address that, Mayor?
I think it's working now. Well, you know, I think the cohort that was up here on this stage and is an example of what that's going to look like. It's about empowering the people of Lahaina and the people of West Maui to be able to control their own destiny in a sense. And you know, somewhere out there on Maui, he might not be in here, but there's a young man named Michael Dahilig, and he was our former planning director. He became my managing director, and then he abandoned us for bigger things, so, you know. But as a planning director, he really changed the way that government held community meetings when they were undergoing the general plan, which the planning department got national recognition. They went out to communities. They kept people like me away from those meetings because a mayor can cast a dark cloud and have a chilling effect on people's ability to speak freely.
The crooked eye I told you about, bro.
Not on Kaua'i because I'd get lickings, but but what he really did is he created an environment where people felt comfortable speaking about what they wanted Kaua'i to look like moving into the future. And they didn't leave any stone unturned. They walked house to house to let people know about these meetings. They really utilized social media. They had their traditional press releases. But if you didn't know that there was a meeting in your neighborhood, it was really hard to make an excuse of why you didn't know about it. And they went out there with no preconceived notion. They say, we are the planning department, we come in peace. And we're just here to hear what you folks want to see moving into the future. And they got all of these ideas. There was no podium, no microphone, because not everybody likes, in fact, most people don't feel comfortable speaking in public. But they just had index cards and they had boxes and they got all these great ideas. And they looked at common denominators. They wanted to maintain the rural character of Kaua'i. They wanted to make sure that we had housing for our own people. They wanted to make sure that the visitor destination was designated and stayed in visitor destination areas. that we really value our agricultural heritage and we wanted to preserve agriculture. And they realized that 99.9% of the things that government wants, well, by golly, our people want too. But instead of it coming from us, it was coming from the people. And we say the important thing in carpentry is to measure twice and cut once. And that's what it looks like when government measures twice and cuts once. They empower communities to really sail the ship and captain us moving forward into the future. And here's what happened. At the 11th hour, you always have people that will come out in opposition. But unbeknownst to them, the community had built this plan. And so a lot of them came out and said, "How dare you? How dare you come out here at the 11th hour to oppose this plan that the people of Kaua'i put together, the plan that made us sacrifice dinners and soccer games and everything else, and you just show up to try to stop this?" And I think that that is the way, not only for the people of West Maui and Lahaina, but I think that is the way moving forward for the rest of the state of Hawaii. And I think that's where we can really differentiate ourselves from the rest of the world, is to start empowering our communities to shape what we will look like into the future.
Well stated. Well stated. I want to jump over to Mayor Roth, and Mayor Roth has a very unique island. He has this interesting geographic dichotomy between Kona and Hilo, right? I mean, and this has been going on long before I was born, Mayor. I mean, where, you know, the argument of revenue is generated in Kona, spent in Hilo, right? Rain in Hilo, dry in Kona. And they both have their challenges, right? And what has happened now on the west side is, as a result of the disaster, you have this dichotomy now, because they're going to have to figure their journey out. And as Mayor said, and as the Mayor Bissen has said, it's going to be a community-led, government-supported effort. But you've been dealing with that dichotomy for your entire, first term. How do you deal with that? Housing's got to be a part of that solution. What's your mana'o on that?
Yeah, thanks. I almost fell asleep over here. Listening to these guys. Just kidding, Rick.
You're not a very funny guy. You're really not.
We love you guys. Actually, I was getting comfortable. It was really interesting. But in honesty, where Derek and Rick started, I want to say, from people of Hawaii, we feel the same, that our heart is here with Maui, and I've said this many times, we're all Maui. And where things sometimes bring you apart, there's things that can bring you together, and I think this has brought all of us and our whole state together to rally, and just an amazing opportunity working with these three other gentlemen up here. When you talk about bringing people together, I think there's so many times we get stuck on what we don't want, and we start focusing on that. We don't want to become the mainland. We don't want to build to do this. And so there's oftentimes on Hawaiʻi Island, people, we don't want any development. We don't want TMT. We don't want this. We focus on things that we don't want versus what we do want. And so one of the things that we've been focusing on in our administration is sustainability. And that means pretty much what it means to everybody in here, but really what it means to me is that ability to allow our keiki to raise their keiki here in Hawaii. In turn, their keiki to raise their keiki. And it doesn't matter if you are not in favor of something. Generally, most people can get around and say, yeah, that is something that we do want. And so we've been focusing on how do we make that happen. The number one way you make that happen is housing. And not just any housing, but housing for, our local people. And so we've started focusing even down a little bit further than that, focusing on our Hawaiian kids. And why our Hawaiian kids? Because, as we lose, we're at a time, and we've said this many times, we're at a time where there's more Hawaiians on the continent than over here. But as we lose our Hawaiian kids, we lose our culture. And as we lose our culture, we lose our identification of who we are. And as we lose our identification of who we are, we become California. I usually say we become Honolulu too, but Rick, in deference, I won't say that. So, we've been looking at ways of how you do that. And so when you're intentional in that way, you're able to make things happen. When we came in, we saw that in our pipeline, we had about 1,200 homes or affordable housing units in our pipeline. And we knew right from the get-go we needed to get to 10,000 before 2025. And so we started looking at how you make that happen. And oftentimes, government is looked at how you regulate things. And we have to change that philosophy from government, from being regulators to being facilitators, to making it happen. Getting together, thank you. Getting together with people that can make it happen. In doing that, we've gone from 1,200 in our pipeline to a little over 6,600 in our pipeline moving forward. Things that I know that we're all working on is making sure that the system is efficient. Coming in, I know Rick and I, we talk about how bad the permitting systems have been. Our permitting system, according to UHERO, was the worst in the country. It was taking about 200 days to get a permit through if you didn't have any changes to build a house. That time is money. And rather than say, there's all these rules, let's figure out how we change those rules. We've been able to do that, bring it down to around 30 days to do that. Rick, don't say it.
You can go for it, Mayor. You shoot left, not right.
He says, I hate you.
That's all I ask.
But part of that too is working together and figuring out how you make solutions. Right now, Honolulu has come up with some great legislation, I think, and that's from their administration. We're looking at how we kind of copy that, and even though we're at a stage of we're not down low enough to really move the ball as quickly as we want to. And some people get a little bit nervous about that. But if we're going to keep our kids here and allow them to raise their kids here, we have to be really intentional and we have to be focused. So, people on both sides of the island, everybody sees that there's not enough people working in the restaurants. There's not enough people working at the stores. That doesn't change unless you have housing, unless you're intentional. And you have to develop, but you don't have to develop the kinds of places that they have on the mainland to do that. You can do it in a local style. It means sometimes you have to work together and be untraditional. Right now, we're working with DHHL and trying to figure out how maybe we can give some of our land to DHHL because, those are our local people. We want our local people to be in houses. It's building partnerships. It's building partnerships. It's thinking ways that we haven't done things before. Oftentimes we get stuck in government with, well, that's the way we've always done it. To which I always like to ask the Dr. Phil question, which is, how's that working for you? And if it's not working for you, change. And I think one of the great things with my fellow mayors up here is I think we're all willing to make change to make a better Hawaii, to help our people thrive and succeed versus just doing it the way we've always done it.
Well stated, Mayor Roth. How about a hand for Mayor Roth?
Derek, I didn't mean it that way. That took so long to get over here.
And I'm looking down at Mayor Bissen, and I'd kind of give him a little hint about what I was going to say, but I have a feeling he's just going to say what he wants to say right now, because I know I'm well enough to see his mind just going right now. And so you've been listening to the conversation, Mayor. You know, all of these leaders have so much aloha for you and your people. They're going to stitch their force together to do everything they can, I can tell, to help you and your people. What's your mana'o?
Okay, so don't worry. I'm not going to sing a song.
This is the hanaho.
And I apologize to the cameraman for having to adjust the camera because I stood up. But I wanted to say a couple of things about these four gentlemen that has nothing to do with the question. But I will think or say the question that you folks all have on your mind right now. How come one of them is not our mayor from Maui? How come you guys got stuck with, how come we stuck with Bissen, listening to all these guys? I know, you guys like change your vote. They don't have residency. So that's the answer to the question. I wanted to go back to August 8th real quick. These are the first four people who called me individually. They're also the first to send help. So this was my chance to thank them in front of all of you. Can you help me thank them? So, thank you, my friend. No,
Let me give you the hug. Love you, brother.
Thanks.
You know, the first time I met Mayor Bissen was in the Honolulu airport, and we were standing
Bathroom.
next to each other in the bathroom. And I'm like,
This is being live streamed right now. I'm just telling you.
yeah.
Okay, so.
It's okay.
Where's Nalani?
But are you Judge Bissen? He goes, you're Mayor Kawakami. You're a lot bigger in real life than you are. That's the God honest truth. You have a good mayor. We love him. If I lived here, I'd vote for him too.
No, so Michael called me that evening to tell me that the Maui Strong Fund had already been set up. And I had no idea what he was talking about because it had been set up by the previous administration only to be funded when catastrophe hit us or the disaster. So they had the foresight to already have this fund in place. And as you know by now, there's over $150 million that has been donated to that. That didn't, it was set up immediately for us. and the rest of the mayors were all aware of what was happening and were each offering support. And by the next day, they were sending their staff, whether they were firefighters, police officers, people working in the EOC, every one of them. You know, sometimes you have to do something called it's called an RFA, a request for assistance, and that goes through the channels, and then it goes to the person, and they send you what you need, any apparatus or personnel. They didn't wait for that. We didn't make any requests. They just sent them over. So I feel like I'll always be thanking them for that. I don't want to steal anyone's thunder, but I also see in the audience Lieutenant Governor Sylvia Luke, who on August 8th was the acting governor in the state of Hawaii. And she was calling me at all hours of the day and night that night when something would come to her. She'd call me again at 11:30 at night. Oh, just remember this or something. And of course, took immediate control as well. And I'd be remiss if I didn't also note the governor as well. has been obviously a big help for our county. So I guess it was just an opportunity for everybody who came together. And in the true spirit of Maui, we gave the two smaller guys the bigger couch for today. How many of you guys was wondering that yesterday at the visitor industry presentation? No, I'm just asking. If you was here for the visitor industry, how many of you guys was wondering, how come the two smallest guys had the biggest couch? And everybody else had to kind of squeeze. But no,
Mayor B, you can jump in, Mayor B. You can go right now.
No, yeah, he'll
attack him.
I'm letting him.
He's ready. He's ready. You know, housing was an issue on Maui and on West Maui before August 8th, and it became, obviously, a bigger issue after that. I want to commend Matt also for, this is the first I've seen this, but he's been in contact with our county, our office, to share with us what he was doing and what he started. And then, obviously, I didn't realize Kuhio hired him as well, and I think that also helps. Because as I said to you yesterday, Kuhio has been one of our strong, supporters and helpers. What I want to say is Matt is absolutely correct. One of the things we have on Maui is we have lots of inventory. People talk about building things, putting up tiny homes. I'm going to tell you right now, any company, I think in the United States or perhaps the world, has contacted us about bringing tiny homes here. And I'm sure several of you have come up to us, called us, and said, oh, I have somebody I know can bring you. And by the way, for some reason, it's always 200 units. They can always bring, not 45, not 89, it's always 200. And I think that's because maybe the shipping or something. I have no idea why. I'm not kidding. They say, I can bring you, but you got to buy like all 200 or something or donate it. The problem is where we put them, where we find the water, the sewer, and some of the other things. The infrastructure is one of the barriers to our housing, at least on Maui, and I'm not sure if it's exactly the same in the 3 other counties. So when we talk about infrastructure, you folks were here listening to Kaikeahi yesterday talk about water in Lahaina. So if we're going to build housing, new housing, then we need to face those challenges. And these aren't new challenges. And yes, we have issues of private ownership. People who have private ownership of homes, private water systems that people have developed. So yes, there are things that government can do, for sure. Government can take from one and give to another. Yeah, government can do that. Yeah. And you take all the other challenges that come with that as well, and that's what we've been working on. That's something that, I'm going to say a week ago, we have met with, I want to say 6 of the top companies that run the, some of the groups that were mentioned in Matt's presentation, because what the county is seeking is voluntary compliance from the industry to donate the rooms or the homes and stuff that we need. That's the first thing, is to ask, can you turn your units into that? Now, if they say no, then we have the option that has been talked about. It's not that we don't understand the option or we're not aware of the option. The question is, when do you, as my fellow mayors have said, when do you make that call? When do you do it? Because of what comes with that. And so that's the discussion. The decision-making point is yet to come. Since everybody's throwing out sayings and phrases, there's an old saying, you don't give credit to the one who predicts the storm or the flood. You give credit to the one who builds the ark. And we need to be in the ark building phase now. The problem is understood. The challenges are understood. There's how do I say it? Different ways to do this. I'll say this as well. We recognize that we have inventory on Maui. This is what I was starting to say about those tiny homes and stuff that people want to offer us, and where to put them, and just slap them up because people will take them. And there are folks that are interested in that, by the way, just so I can acknowledge that. It's not that we don't have enough homes. It's that we don't have enough money to pay for those particular homes. So that's correct. Matt pointed it out, very correct. If money was not an object, we could buy all the second homes or short-term homes or pay for those costs. And that's what we're going to talk about, right? We're getting funding from the federal government. The state is helping. private philanthropy. So the issue is, oh, not enough homes on Maui. No, get plenty homes on Maui. Plenty empty homes on Maui that other people own. So the question is for us to find that, and I know there's plenty mana'o and plenty discussions that we can have and that we have had and will continue to have. I was just mentioning some of the obstacles and some of the barriers that are there. And yes, we want everybody from Lahaina to remain in Lahaina. People in Kula to remain in Kula. We want people to be where they are from. We don't want people selling their lands. We don't want people selling their homes. We don't want people giving in to opportunists that will try to capitalize on what's happening to our community. And people who want to take the first thing that's offered to them without knowing the other things. And our duty as government is to present the other options that people have. This talk of creating a land trust, that's a great idea. We agree with that idea. You know, there's issues of people's insurance, not having enough insurance, being underinsured, uninsured. There are so many other topics that come out of this discussion that has to do with long-term, where people will end up. Right now we're dealing with the interim. The interim period is what we're at. Short-term is the emergency housing that people are in hotels. And the interim housing is the piece we're talking about now. And then, of course, we have the long-term that we're working on. But I just wanted to say thanks to these mayors for coming over today, by the way, and helping us. Thank you.
Thank you, Rick.
Open mic. Open mic. Who's got a comment? Mayor B, RB1? What you got?
You talking to me?
Yes, sir.
Well, you know, as I was sitting here, I realized that I apologize. That went off on the rail. I mean, we're here to talk about housing, but you asked me the question, and
That's your housing corridor, though, right? I mean,
yeah,
that's where it's going to be, right?
well, that's true. Ultimately, the rail for that corridor that it will serve, ultimately, because this is a transformative project for future generations, will become more of a housing play than a transit play.
But it hits on that trade-off issue, right? They were talking about it. Early on, I mean, the Sierra Club endorsed the rail
Right.
on the concept that, you know, that they would densify the urban core and protect the rural communities, right? I mean, that was that trade-off, and there's probably going to be more of those trade-offs for all of the mayors and their communities as they think about creating housing. I would think.
You know, I think that's true. That's part of the future we're going into. I mean, you know, and everything we're saying with respect to embracing change, you have to be open-minded and try to make the best decisions possible. But I do want to say, I think it was Michelle this morning that said hope is an action word. I'm talking about the road ahead. And by no means, as difficult as the rail was, it doesn't compare to, I believe, what the challenge of rebuilding Lahaina is going to be. I realize it's very, very complex. But one of the things that I was struck about by the people of this island, when the fires happened, the state opened up the convention center, and we were trying to prepare on Oahu for an influx of everybody, if you will, to come over to seek respite and shelter. And we ended up having to close the convention center, and we never got that group of people. And as I think I saw in Matt's report today, people stayed on island. If that doesn't speak to an incredible, intense love of place, I don't know what does. And when you have that as a foundation, you know, nothing can stop you going forward. And so I think that I'm very hopeful. I just, you know, at my age right now, I don't buy green bananas, as the old saying goes. I just hope I can live long enough to see. Well, you know, when you're 77 years old, you have really interesting conversations with yourself. It's true. Regrettably, it's true. But I just really am anxious to see what gets created here, and knowing that it'll be very meaningful for this island and for its people.
Kawakami?
You gotta explain the green bananas to me.
In other words, I know not going to be around long enough for them to turn ripe is the whole idea. You know, you don't take anything, the point is you don't take anything for granted. That's the point.
I tell
I
you.
almost got killed by a Christmas tree yesterday.
I tore my bicep on a Christmas tree. This guy, I tell you, he just lays it on thick. We're at our mayor's meeting, and I'm like walking in all, you know, with a pep in my step, and I announce my absolutely phenomenal blood pressure and heartbeat rate, and he goes, oh, here's mine. He's got the blood pressure and the heart rate of like a 17-year-old marathon runner. You can buy more green bananas. Hell, you can go plant a banana tree tomorrow. Who are you kidding? This guy. You know, when I mentioned that the most difficult thing of leadership and decision making is the process of leadership and decision making in and of itself is a filter of who your friends are and who you're friendly with. And whenever we came in to take a look at utilizing government land, underutilized parks, in every single one of those proposals, there were a group of people that are near and dear to my heart, and I was near and dear to their hearts, that were very, very upset at the fact that we were putting these housing units right smack dab in front of them. And, you know, in all seriousness, sort of like, hey, how dare you, Mayor? We help you out our whole life. We've known you, and you do this to us. And when I say for the greater good, and when you talk about trade-offs, you know, we're placed in a role to make these tough decisions for the greater good, even at the expense of those personal relationships. And I think what gets me through that and what gets our team through that is the hope that time heals. That when all is said and done and the project is done, and many times it happens, when the project is done and people see that the folks living in these units are local families with children that are playing and thriving, that it'll come full circle, and with the hope that, yeah, I never agreed with you back then, but now I see the bigger picture. And, you know, for us, I think we all wrestle with that because, you know, in Hawaii, relationships are everything. People that helped you along the way, those relationships are worth its weight in gold. And yet, in order for us to make the changes that are necessary to keep our people thriving and moving forward, we have to at times put those relationships in jeopardy and be at peace with that.
Awesome. Thank you, Mayor. Mayor Roth, I'm going to give you the second to the last word, and then I'll say a few things, and I'm going to let Mayor Bissen close us off.
Yeah, I'm still kind of hooked up on the bananas and Rick talking to himself over here. You know, as I listen, we talked a little bit about hope and talked about how we move forward and how we get things done. And I heard about Linda Taylor Greene, our UN ambassador, coming last week and meeting with the 9th graders from KS. And I had the opportunity about a month and a half ago to go up to the United Nations with the governor and those students from KS. And you know, there's something that just gives me a lot of hope. And what that is one of the things that one of the students said was, we need to teach the world to focus in on their superpower to get things done. And in Hawaii, our superpower is aloha. And it was kind of profound. I'm thinking about that. I don't know why. Maybe this conversation that Rick and I were having about, you know, why people love Hawaii, why they come back, how we keep them here. Why our visitors come. They come for the beauty, but they stay for the people, I think was the old line that they said. If we're going to solve these problems, we're going to solve them working together. And what I know with the people in Hawaii is that because of our aloha, because of the aloha that we have for each other, because of the aloha we all have for each other, I think there's a lot of hope. And I think we have a lot of possibilities as we rebuild Maui, as Maui rebuilds Maui. I have a lot of hope because what I've seen is the people of Maui are able to tap into that superpower of aloha.
Well stated, Mayor Roth. Thank you. You know, I think when Kuhio, again, was thinking about this panel and we were having a conversation, I mean, organizations like ours at HCF and CNHA and others, and the leaders of those organizations, Michelle being my colleague in that space, definitely. I mean, it's a real privilege that we get to sit in their space and to work with them. And I think what we've recognized is that there's this common thread that flows through these four leaders that we as a Lahui, as a community, which means all of you out there, we wanted you to see that, help us find that. We can't really get our arms around it just yet and how we're gonna try to support these four leaders to do the work that they need to do to help those in greatest need. But we wanted you guys to feel that and see that. And I hope you got that in this conversation this afternoon. And so we'll let you end, Mayor Bissen, with the final word in your aina over here, brother.
So just to add to what Mayor Kawakami was saying earlier, one of the challenges that I think we all face in government especially is you make a group decision that affects people individually. You know, we don't make 1,000 individual decisions for folks. We make a decision that is going to impact the whole group, but depending on where you are, it's going to impact you differently and affect you differently, and therefore brings the challenge because it doesn't fit every situation and doesn't fit everyone the same way. I just wanted to speak that and let you know that we're mindful of that, and that our goal in our administration, again, during this response and recovery time, is to do everything we can to give the safe and stable, secure housing for our folks that are not in that way right now, dealing with uncertainty and instability. So our goal is to get to them as safe and secure housing as we can, as soon as we can. And just to let you know, everything that we can possibly think of and happen, that we can make happen is what's being pursued. And I know we can do a better job of making that known to you. That's the feedback we get, to message that more, so you can be comfortable knowing that that's happening. So that's the commitment. That's a big thing that's been the theme of this conference as well, is getting more information from your government. And that's me, your government. And so we will commit to doing that as well right after this. In fact, get started today with doing more messaging. We were in Lahaina last night. So every Wednesdays we will be in Lahaina giving out the reports. We'll be in Kula tonight, and we're in Kula every Thursdays now, starting last Thursday. And so for those of you that are impacted in those two communities, we have people assigned to help in those particular communities as well. We'll try everything we can in terms of social media, newspaper, and media, everything else that we've been trying to do to get that information to you. But I do appreciate everyone's patience and tolerance with what's been happening, and that's our commitment to you. So, mahalo.
How about a hand for our mayors, everyone? Mahalo. Mahalo for having us.
Mahalo, men.